It's the festive season, but in Ruaka in central Kenya, a family gathers not to celebrate but to mourn. In October, a hopeful Martin Macharia left the country, but less than a month later he was reported dead, killed in the battlefields of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Grace Gathoni says her husband, a father of 4, boarded the plane to Russia after a Kenyan recruiter promised him a job as a driver and cleaner.
He told me he didn't even mind being a cleaner as long as he was able to come back home with what he had earned.
His departure was filled with many expectations. When their family member left the country, this family had high hopes that his departure would change their fortunes. However, matters took a very different turn. Days after his arrival, Macharia informed his wife that instead of working as a driver, he was being trained to fight in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He asked her to seek urgent help to get him back home, but his family would later learn of his death through news reports. Macharia's story echoes across the continent. In early December, 5 South Africans appeared in court on charges related to recruitment and fighting for Russia in its conflict with Ukraine. 17 South Africans were reported to have been tricked onto the front lines of the conflict. Kenya's Ministry of Foreign Affairs reports that Kenyan recruits to Russia were promised up to $18,000 per person for visas, travel and accommodation.
Reports suggest that over 200 Kenyans may have joined this adventure or misadventure, with some of them being former members of Kenya's disciplined services. Unfortunately, those who have been rescued have said they were misled about the nature of the work they were to do, including assembling drones, handling chemicals, and painting works.
The Kenyan government now says it is engaging Russian authorities to prevent Kenyans from being misled into joining the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In Kenya, Macharia's family is asking for the return of his remains and calling for justice.
I wish they had told the recruits the truth, so that they know in their heart the work they're going to do, and they have agreed to do it. But there's no need to lie to people like they lied to my husband.
Despite recent crackdowns on recruiters, Kenyan authorities have urged the public to be vigilant, warning that recruitment networks are still active. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN, Kiambu, Kenya.
Well, let's delve deeper into this development. Andy Mashailef, a former Interpol ambassador in security strategies, is joining us via Zoom from Johannesburg. Andy, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. First of all, talk to us about this. What makes African youth so vulnerable to human trafficking?
Good afternoon to you and your heavyweight show viewers. Young people or youth or young adults would be victims of these recruitment scams that lead to death and sometimes incarceration in other parts of the world purely because of unemployment and the economic conditions in our countries. Let me take the country where you are, Kenya, and compare it to South Africa, where I am, Gauteng, or the area where I was born and bred. The levels of unemployment are very high in my country, and these are some of the issues that have led to the 17 men which left South Africa and going to Russia to train to become personal security or close protection officers, and they then found themselves in Donbass. Right at the in the trenches, right in the front lines of the war of Russia against Ukraine. And also the 4 people that were arrested 2 weeks back at OR Tambo. One of them is a DJ at a well-known radio station in South Africa, SAFM, being recruited to go through to Russia for employment purposes. These are the reasons why youth and young adults or young people would become victims of these scammers that recruit all over our continent for the mercenary work in Russia for Ukraine or against Ukraine.
Right, Andy, so, you know, international travel and migration are fairly well controlled and police processes. Why is it still possible for human traffickers to carry out their business at such scale?
As an expert in security and a former ambassador, I will put it to you that there is no such thing as well-controlled law enforcement processes that would look after preventing and combating human trafficking. As long as there is a human being in the mix, a human being is subject to being bribed, to being corrupted. A human being would then take the 10,000 naira or the 1 million shillings from Malawi, or 150,000, if not 1 million rand from South Africa, to ensure passage. I spoke to you earlier on about the OR Tambo International. It's a national key point as well as an international key point, but you still find people who come from Pakistani finding it easy to come through that port of entry, purely because of bribery, purely because of those who are tasked with that responsibility of ensuring that it doesn't happen. Get bribed, get paid monies, and they look by the side when these drug traffickers and human traffickers arrive at those ports of entry.